notion called, there's a occurrence in the market called intersection. Let me just tell you what the reason for me even getting into or researching the markets as closely as I did. In 1973, 72, 73, 74, when I was working on this approach, there was a stock called equity funding, which was an institutional holding that a lot of the institutions owned. And the stock was in the high 30s, had come down quite a bit. And a number of analysts on Wall Street were recommending the stock. And what happened at the time, which no one was aware of, there was fraud. Fraud existed within the company. And management was not disclosing what they were doing with there were a lot of bogus transactions in the company. So the stock ultimately went into bankruptcy. Someone exposed them, this fellow from a brokerage house called John Muir, this guy named Ray Dirks, who got in trouble. He notified his clients, he suspected some wrongdoing, and what happened, eventually a lot of institutions got hurt in the stock. And fortunately we weren't invested in there, but some of my friends were. And I looked at the price pattern, and I counted what I believed to be the sequential system I had created, and I said, yeah, I would have bought this stock at $18 or $20. And sequential would have gotten me in, and I would have been locked in the cockpit, and the plane would have been crashing. How do I prevent this? Well, there was another stock about the same time called WT Grant. And WT Grant was also going into bankruptcy, and had a common pattern with equity funding. And I saw something in common with both of them. And specifically, I'm going to keep this chart here, and I'm going to draw another chart just to give you, so I can distinguish between the two. Okay, let me just take you through this real quickly. You can see this close here. This close here is greater than the close 4 trading days earlier. Now, for a buy setup, you need 9 consecutive closes, less than the close 4 trading days earlier. Right here, this close is less than that close. This one obviously is less than 4 ago. This one is less than 4 ago, less than 4 ago. This one here is also less than 4 trading days ago. So you got a series of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's just number these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. What happened in the case of WT Grant and equity funding was a phenomenon that I was able to apply to other situations since then. Unless you retard the decline, you can see how steep this decline is becoming right here. The market's just, say it's going down like this. You got to apply the brake. Somehow the selling has to dry up. You used to have to have an indication of it. So what has to occur is something I call intersection. And you can see, as an example here, let me just show you one first. We've got a high on day 8. This day's high has to intersect. And by intersect, I mean this day's high has to be greater than or equal to the low so many days ago. In the book, I say day 8's high or day 9's high has to be greater than the low 3 trading days earlier. So day 8's high has to be greater than the low of day 7, 6, 5. Day 3 trading days earlier is day 5. Is this high greater than that low? No way. Now, day 9, that day's high has to be greater than the low 3 trading days earlier. 1, 2, 3. Is it greater than 6's low? No, it's not. Now, in the book, you're getting the message that day 8 or day 9 has to be, the high of either one of those days has to be greater than the low 3 days earlier. To really be precise, day 8 or day 9 has to be greater than the low 3 trading days earlier or any other day prior to that period of time. So on day 8 of the setup. And this is really, it wasn't explicit enough in the book, and I'm sharing with you to make it more explicit because it's very important. Some of the people I know who are using sequential, whom I shared it with in the previous 15, 20 years, only compared it with 3 days earlier. I'm saying you can compare the high on day 8 with the low of day 5 of the setup day 4 of the setup, day 3 of the setup, day 2 of the setup, or day 1 of the setup. And on day 9, the high can be compared with the low of day 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So if either one of those days is greater than, in the case of 9, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and a day of 8, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the low of any one of those days, you've got what I call intersection. Now, if you look over here, this is fairly typical. Day 8 obviously is greater, the high of day 8 is obviously greater than the low of day 5. It's greater than the low of day 4, so you can pick almost any one of these days, it is. This is a common occurrence. Day 9 is greater than the low of 6, 5, 4, any one of those. So you do have intersection here. It's telling you that the market, the rate of descent is lessening or diminishing, whatever you might want to say. In this particular case, the WT grant or equity funding, it just had a life of its own. Continuous selling. People are buying here, and they're probably hearing a rumor there's fraud in the company. You turn around and sell it instead of holding it. But that supply is drying up. So that's why you got these stocks unraveling. Now, same thing applies to commodities and futures. Generally, you get this pattern where you get the intersection. Occasionally, you get this. In markets, especially that are going to the upside in a big breakaway. So you can almost use this lack of intersection to tell you you're probably going into a breakaway phase in the market. Now, to perfect this intersection a little bit more, let me tell you, if day 8 or 9 don't qualify, then look at the next day. Could be day 10, where the close is less than the close 4 days earlier. We don't highlight day 10. We only say you need 9 days for a buy setup. You look at that high versus 3 days ago, 4 days ago, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way back to the start of setup. Now, say, for example, this particular day over here is not part of what would be called the extension of the setup. You wouldn't have 10 consecutive closes less than the close 4 trading days earlier. Say, for example, you had this, and the close this day was here. You've got intersection, and I may have confused you. I confused myself. Let me go through this again. You keep looking for your intersection, even though the period of setup may be exhausted. And almost by definition, you're going to have to. You'd have a setup on that particular day.
You want to see coffee? It was a breakaway market. Huh?
Yeah, you can show coffee as an example. Maybe that'll explain it a little better. I understand now why people say a picture is worth 1,000 words. In my case, it's probably worth 5,000 words. So, let me show you. See, for example, here's your breakaway. This is what you had in gold back in late 1979, 80 or whatever. Here's day 1.
Those are limit moves.
These are all limit moves, but see, you got your cell set up right here, but no intersection. So there's no count. His machine is programmed to pick up the count days. So you have no count throughout that whole period. You know, like an example right here on coffee. This is the July of this year when the market had that explosion to the upside. You can see here that intersection did not occur throughout the whole period. And the way the software has been written, numbers would appear for what I call a countdown phase, and you don't see them here. So that's telling me that there's been no intersection. And by intersection, once again, I mean the low of day 8 being less than the high of day 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or day 9's low being less than the high of day 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just didn't occur. Now, our subsequent day, now this day, the market low, you can see because it was up limit, locked up limit, in fact, throughout this whole period, did not intersect the low of 3 or more trading days earlier through the beginning of day 1 of the setup. And as a result, it kept you out of there. You also got an indication, and something I'll discuss later, is how do you know when you're going into a setup phase, in this case a 9-cell setup, that you're going to stop there and you're going to get a reflex move to the downside, or you're going to go into this period called countdown, which we'll discuss with you shortly. And it's difficult to distinguish between the two, but one thing I have seen, and I'll discuss, like I said, later, but if you do get intersection during this period, you normally do get an interruption where the market moves sideways or lower. I like to use this, the setup phase, in this particular case. Say I bought down here. Say I was fortunate enough to get a buy signal, not a buy signal, a buy indication, a low risk like to call it low risk, not to systematize this. I like to say a low risk zone down here where you get some idea that the market's bottoming. Where would I take profits? Probably on a 9. So you can use these 9s, you can use them differently. You can say, I'm going to take a profit at this 9 because I could get a hesitation in the market. I'm going to sell half of what I own or a third. I've got a big gain here. So that's kind of the way I use the a sell setup as well, taking profits. Now, let's just go over this once again on the intersection. The high of day 8 or day 9 is greater. This is for a buy. This is the case of a buy, whereas you're looking at a screen, it was a sell. The high of day 8 or day 9 is greater than the low. Doesn't say the low. I didn't put low on here, unfortunately. Greater than the low. 3 or more. Let's emphasize that. Trading days before each day. As I told you before, if this day is high, you go back, is greater than the low. 3 days back, this is day 8, say, of 5 in the setup, you qualify for intersection. And day 9, same thing. Go back. Say you didn't get that here, but you got day 9 over here, you qualify. You got to look for that. That just slows the speed down and avoids those equity funding WT grant fiascos, or even in the case, the reverse being here on the coffee chart, where you blow off to the upside. You want to retard that advance or the decline.